We may live over 5 miles from Lincoln Financial pick up for in the film study, and each and every week we will be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane Page. I am your host, Shane Haff. We're at Shane, and I'm Shane's own Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Johnny, how are you doing this evening?
I was waiting for the "how are you doing" question. I was thinking, terrible, Shane, for so many reasons. Firstly, I should probably get out of the way if you hear Shane's voice going a little bit. Shane is under the weather, so this is dedication to the podcast because I don't think he can speak very well, and we have to talk about this game. What a weird game. Like, I messaged you before saying if you don't laugh, you'll cry at this game. It was one of the worst, if not like the worst game I've ever watched. Like, the Cardinals game was bad on defense. Obviously, the Giants game was horrendous on offense. This was like the full package. This was awful for a playoff game. I try and stay very rational, but this week I really can't. Like, I'm fully out. Yeah, I want to start with two things as well before we get into it, just because they're on my mind. Firstly, I'm going to a little bit of positive shout out. I just want to say a massive, massive thank you to everyone who has listened. We always do that at the end of the podcast. I feel like most people who listens to all of podcasts, like there's lots of podcasts in my app that I get through about 45 or half an hour and then forget. So if you have watched us, liked us, commented on YouTube, etc., massive, massive thank you. I'm also going to throw shots at the Eagles fan base because, Shane, I tweeted saying that I'm not pulling an all-nighter to watch this game, and I had actual people questioning why I was not staying up for this. So I feel like I'm going to give people a little bit of UK background. This game kicks off at, actually kicks off, you can tell I'm English, 8:15 your time. That's 1:15 in the morning UK time, right? And I cannot sleep before a game. Like, I can't nap. That would mean this game would end about 4:30 in the morning. My alarm for work is set off at 5:30 in the morning. You think I'm going to sleep the second this game ends? There's no chance. If you think my Monday at work is going to be absolutely wrecked to watch this team, I'll start for a Super Bowl, probably a conference championship game. There was absolutely no way I was ever staying up for this game. This team were always going to do this. I tried to get optimistic about certain things, but the writing was on the wall. I had actual people questioning, like, I'm 29, lads. I can't stay up all night and go to work all week off no sleep. There is absolutely no chance. I've done it once when we won the Super Bowl, and it was horrendous. Luckily, I was so happy. The whole day was just the endorphins were running through me, so I was happy all Monday. But for this Monday, can you imagine having to go to work after no sleep watching that game? It would have been the worst Monday of all time. So apologies, Eagles fans. I actually got the first point of abuse for being weak for not staying up. This team does not deserve my attention that much anyway, because the coaches clearly were not putting any all-nighters before this one. So if they're not, there's absolutely no chance I'm not. So I thought I'd get out of the way with a little bit of good and bad before we... I was going to say, is there any... Well, there'll be a few positives this week, but before we go in, it's not really our style. We don't want to just moan, but how the hell can you not just moan when you watch this film? Because it is so rough. It's so rough.
Johnny, it feels like the easiest solution to your conundrum there is just pull the all-nighter to watch the game. And then you can hop on the post-game show with me and Jess for that hour, and then you just go straight to work. You don't have to even try to go to sleep. I think that's a perfect solution.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. And then I can moan about it even more and then go into work on Monday with severe depression from lack of sleep and watching this team. Yeah, maybe for a conference game, that'll be great. We'll record it once. I'll just document my day on a Monday. But yeah, not this team. This team did not deserve my attention, Shane. They did not turn up, so I didn't either.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I would not be staying up to watch a 1 a.m. kickoff. By the way, kickoff, that's what I say, at least. So I don't think that's an English thing.
I realized last week watching it back, I once said about a cornerback, he needs to mark the opposing receiver. And I was like, oh no, that's very English. That's very English. Cover is the correct term. Apologies, guys. 29 years in the UK. I can't really change the way I speak, despite listening to a lot of American podcasts. So I definitely have some American lingo in my vocabulary now, but can't change 29 years of living in England.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dive into it, Johnny. Do you want to start offense or defense this time?
Offense. I have so much to say, no doubt. Defense, I knew was going to suck. I said to you before, I say I don't really care about the defense. Like, it's terrible. All the coaches are going to go, whatever happened to Sirianni. Oh, I meant to say that at the start as well. Little background. We're recording this about 2:00 your time, Wednesday. So if Sirianni is fired by the time you listen to this, we might touch on it briefly, but that might be why that we haven't commented on it. Or if he's announced he's staying, of course. So we'll sort of get into it briefly when we touch on our points. But yeah, to be honest, I want to start on offense because I've got a lot to say about the offense. Defense, not so much.
All right, well, let's start on the offensive side of the ball. And I mean, I think you have to start with the Eagles having absolutely zero answers to the blitz. I mean, it's one thing to face the Giant. And maybe you haven't faced a blitz-happy team in a while. And you go empty a lot, and they blitz 6, and it doesn't work. But then to come back 2 weeks later and do the same thing again to the Giants, and then to come out against the Buccaneers and continue to go empty and continue to be cover 0 blitzed and continue to be shocked that anyone would have the audacity to do that to you. Like, it's just mind-boggling. I legitimately don't know what this team does during the week. Like, I don't know what this staff does in the film room. You look at this team and, like, I just don't know how you don't see it, man. Like, I don't know how you continue to allow blitzing to derail you, how your answer to it continues to be screen passes that simply don't work. And, like, I don't even know if they practice them. Like, there was one where they threw a screen pass to Dallas Goedert and he runs into Julio Jones. Do they not practice these? Like, you can go on a walkthrough and realize that alignment does not work for that play. I just don't get it. I don't understand. I said there's a lot of, well, I'll save that for when we talk about Hurts, but this offense is just pitiful. It's poorly designed. At times it's poorly executed. It's poorly blocked up front. Everything's just terrible with this offense over the last month of the season.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you, Shane. Not about anything that you really said there, but you said they don't have answers. They do. They're just terrible answers. They do have answers. They prepare like that. Honestly, the play against the Blitz this week. So I told myself I wasn't going to get annoyed watching this game, and I get up at 5 a.m. Sometimes maybe like 4:45, 4:30 to watch this. So I watch it right at the end, and I said I'm not going to get annoyed. They're going to lose, and I was genuinely angry. And I try not to get angry watching sports anymore. I was angry, like legitimately angry on the first 3rd and 2. Because to me, and I wrote about this yesterday, as in I put it on Twitter, and I try and be rational, and I use language that I wouldn't normally use, describing an NFL coaching staff. So to quote from myself, I basically said that the Eagles don't bother adjusting because they think they are better than everyone else. And that's how I feel. It's pure arrogance. It's hubris. It's the idea that they don't need to do anything different because what they do will work. And this is the one that you're showing now. This 3rd and 2, it kills me. Because as you said, Shane, they do have answers. They do have answers. Jalen Hurts, and I saw someone comment like, well, why does Jalen Hurts alert to this? I'm like, listen, he's not the coach. If the coach is telling him, if you're getting cover 0 blitz, this is the alert, this is the play, then that's what he's going to do. That's not his fault. You can't moan at him for throwing the go ball on the outside to Goddard. We don't know what happens in behind the scenes and stuff, but this is the worst play call like in the world. And I mean that. Like, it's so just like, let's just throw it up. Let's not bother trying to do anything interesting. We'll just throw a go ball with one-on-one coverage. Because why? Explosive plays. As we've said all year. It's 3rd and 2. I said this in the thing I wrote, but 3 yards is not, it's not a criticism. It's like, we're too good to get 3 yards. Do you know what? QB sneak it twice in a row. Like, I don't care. Like, it's like an arrogance. It's a belief that we're better than you. We don't need to scheme things up because we're better than you. And that's what they're not better than you. Maybe with AJ Brown, they are sometimes. But every single 3rd down is either empty, they're getting blitzed, there's a free rusher, there's unblocked pressure, and they do not do a single thing to help their receivers. That was the most obvious, like literally just run slant flat. Just motion, do anything. Put a stack so you can have you can create a natural rub. Like, you're getting the most obvious pick plays opportunity ever. This is the same one. Again, the Quez Watkins fade. It's the same. It's the exact same. Identical. We know we're getting man coverage. We know we're getting cover 0. It's the most obvious cover 0 man coverage in humanity you could ever see. Like run a pick play, run a slant flat, put someone in motion, bring a running back across the formation, and then when he gets the quarterback, make him turn around and run the other way and dump it off to him. Just do anything, like literally anything. I've never screamed for a slant flat so much in my life. Like it's obsessed with explosive plays. They're obsessed with them. It's an obsession with we're better than you are, and we don't need to do anything different because what we do will work. There's an obsession with execution, and we just got to execute. I can see them, Shane, in the drawing board going, oh, you know what, that slot fade was a good play call. Because if Quez Watkins wins, then but it's not because they're not better. They probably still think Quez Watkins is good. There's this obsession with everything they do must be good because they've got two good players and they're better. And honestly, it annoyed me, as you can probably tell. They didn't try and do anything. And it's not because they don't know. They're NFL coaches. I say this every week. Of course they know. It's that they think they know best. They don't analyze themselves. They're not critical of themselves. They don't reflect on what has happened. They didn't really, really sit down after that Giants game and say, what is actually wrong with this? They said, oh, the play calls, all right. We didn't execute. And that's the only answer. That's the only answer I have. And if anyone's got anything else, please feel free to tell me that I'm overreacting. I don't see how any other answer makes any sense than the fact that they genuinely think this is the best way of doing it. And I don't know what happens next year. As we said, we're not going to speculate too much, but the offense cannot be like this. They cannot do this again. I actually think the general design of the offense outside of their play against the blitz is not the worst, but it doesn't matter because every single good team will just blitz you. You go to empty, they'll send an extra man, or you'll leave a running back into block, and they'll send an extra man, and you've got nothing. They have genuinely zero answers. Some of the answers in this game, the screens, I know you already commented on how bad the one to Goddard was or whatever, but there was so many. This is the one to Goddard, isn't it? And the guy picks it, by the way. They do what they always do and throw into a slot cornerback blitzing, which they've done so many times this year. Then there's one later on to Devontae Smith that's a joke. There was one to Kenny Gainwell that was a joke. It was honestly like the worst game plan you could ever do against the blitz. I don't think they could do it worse if they tried. I don't understand. Like, I really, really, I mean, this play is like, what is this play? It's the one, if you're not watching and you're listening, it's the throw to Devontae Smith, where he just comes across the formation. I like the name of it. What is this? That's perfect. Literally perfect. Like, I didn't even film every clip this week because there was more than I could film. Basically every single time they got blitzed, it was bad. I don't think there was one they got right. They don't run any quick game. I don't know. I don't know, Shane. I don't know how you can look at this game and have any confidence at all in any single person on that offensive staff. I'm going to say something really radical, Shane. I'm going to say it now while it's a podcast because I haven't got to tweet it. I even worry about Jeff Statland this year. I worry a little bit about the offensive line. They don't pick up things that well. They don't seem to communicate that well. I can't believe experienced offensive linemen. I know Jason Kelce's going to retire. And we're not going to say anything bad about Jason Kelce ever. But I cannot believe experienced offensive linemen have not gone into a meeting room with the coaches and said, what on earth are we doing? I can't believe no one has said, I don't get it. But at the end of the day, the coaches run the team. They call plays. But I find it incredible that this was the plan. Genuinely, as you can probably tell, and I rarely get annoyed watching sports. Like, I try and be really rational. I could not be rational in this play this week. They made a choice not to do anything different. And the only answer I have is that they're arrogant and they think they are better than they are. They just got their whatever beaten by the Bucs easily. Like, there was an easy game for the Bucs. They've had a harder game playing the Cardinals. The Jonathan Gannon and the Cardinals would have easily given them a tougher test. Easily. Like, that was about as bad as a performance as you could do. And outside of a deep post throw to Devontae Smith that was brilliant, they had nothing. They had genuinely had nothing.
Yeah, you mentioned the offensive line, and this is one of those plays. They go 4-by-1 to try to get Devontae Smith one-on-one, and Devontae Smith wins on this route. He wins on this route, but he just needs another quarter second. Throws off. But look at the protection. I don't understand what's happening. Jason Kelce is clearly pointing at number 98. 98's the mic. He's going to slide to 98. That means Cam Jurgens should be blocking the guy that's between him and Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson takes number 54. But then you watch, and they don't do that. Jason Kelce goes to 98 like he said he would. Cam Jurgens also takes him. Lane Johnson blocks 79, and you leave a free rusher off that edge. I don't understand. Like, it's like, then you've got on the left side, Landon Dickerson does what he's supposed to. Him and Kelsey are on the same page. He takes the guy between them. That means Jordan Mailata he's on a dual read, most dangerous man between the end and the edge rusher. And he leaves the inside guy. Like, there's 3 guys coming untouched to Jalen Hurts on a 6-man pressure against 5 blocking. How do 3 guys come in untouched? I just don't understand. Like, you clearly see Jason Kelsey point to number 98. I don't get it. And then off the general design, like, yeah, I think Devontae Smith would win on this, but what's the point of having Dallas Goedert? Like, I'm fine with this little yo-yo motion thing. We don't use it. Why do we have Dallas Goedert and Kenny Gainwell just flaring out to the flat? Like, that's just 2 wasted guys. Just keep Kenny Gainwell into block, and you could block this up. Or throw that, because then you've got Kenny Gainwell lead blocking for Dallas Goedert with tons of space. I don't know. That was one that the protection, I just don't understand what's happening up front, because, again, I just clearly see Kelsey point at 98 and declare him as the Mike, and only he and Landon Dickerson act like that call ever happened. It doesn't make any sense.
That's not a one-off. That's my point about the offensive line. It's not a one-off. It's happened a few times of late. The whole team struggles with blitz massively, like massively. I also wanted to, on talk of design as well, like the lack of motion, I get annoyed about, because there's now a conversation that, motion is good and everyone has to do motion to be good, and they don't have to. But you have to do it a little bit more than the Eagles do. And I always go back to Nick Sirianni saying, we don't want to be 32nd ranked in anything. Well, we are significantly 32nd ranked. And we're not just ranked 32nd, Shane. I think we're motion 10%. I don't even know if any of the motion we use even matters. For me, every motion they use is just a tell. It's just to find out what the defense is doing. They don't use it as a weapon at all. You have to get someone in the building next year who uses it as a weapon. I don't need you to be first in motion. I look at the Dolphins. You could argue they use it too much. You could argue it's a too big a part of their offense. And if you stop it, actually, they don't have a lot else. Motion is a specific thing you use in a certain down and distance against certain teams when you feel you can take advantage of it. But the Eagles just don't do it. They do nothing to get their receivers free. And I want to talk about this stat that I just saw before coming on the podcast as well, from a guy I've mentioned before, Arjun Menon, on Twitter, who's basically going back to 2018. When you look at all the EPA on every single play, basically in the NFL, on early downs, the single most impactful play is under center play action. That is number 1, under center play action. Number 2 is shotgun play action. The Eagles are not really great at either. I mean, they don't have an under center offense. And I keep reading things like, maybe Jalen Hurts doesn't want it. And I'm tough. He's not the coach. He's a well-paid quarterback. Number 1, I keep reading these things that people just speculate that Jalen Hurts doesn't like. And I'm like, has anyone actually asked Jalen Hurts? Is there any sources that have ever said Jalen Hurts doesn't like playing under center, or Jalen Hurts doesn't like rolling out to his right, or Jalen Hurts doesn't like bootleg? Because I just see people speculate because we assume that he's told the coach he doesn't like it. Like, I don't know that. I can't say that. And if he doesn't like it, deal with it. Coach him. Everything you've ever heard about Hurts is that he's incredibly coachable, unlike Wentz was. That's everything we've ever heard about him, was that you can coach him hard. If that's the case, coach him hard. Start in the offseason. Not now, not mid-season. It's too late now. It's too late. Pre-season, the whole summer training camp, you work on under center, whoever is here next year. You cannot run an offense that uses no under center, that uses no motion, no stacks, no bunches. It just literally relies on your players being better. And I said this to you off air. Can you imagine this coaching staff with a team that didn't have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts, and this offensive line? Can you imagine giving Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson the Panthers this year? Like, they'd break records for points scored, and the bad type, not the good amount. Like, realistically, because their offense relies on players. And you'd think AJ Brown being out, they would make some. They've had all week to make an adjustment without the wide receiver 1 being out. Nick Sirianni came out and said, well, we've got a plan, whether he plays or whether he doesn't. There is no way that plan was different if AJ Brown was there. It would have been the exact same. You would have just run the same plays with AJ Brown there instead. So some of them might have worked better than others. It was laughable. It was genuinely laughable. And I don't say that very often. And if people have only listened to the podcast for a year, but hopefully they follow my tweets and I've written for goodness knows how many years. I do not criticize that much. I don't like to criticize coaches. In fact, I hate it because I've said repeatedly, they know a hell of a lot more than I do. But it was awful. And when every single person in the NFL film watching world, whether that's Honest NFL, Dan Orlovsky, Brian Baldinger, you name it, when every single person gets the film and watches it like us and says, what on earth is going on? Then you know Jeffrey Lurie is going to have some serious questions because how on earth can you not? Is there anything else you wanted to say on the general design before we touch on a couple of minor other points?
Yeah, just you mentioned things Jalen Hurts doesn't like to do. The only valid reason to not be under center at all, there's two. One is you're going to use your quarterback a ton in the running game, and so you put him in shotgun a lot. So you open up those read options. The Eagles didn't run with Hurts much this year, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I would generally like to use him less as a runner during the season, ramp it up in the playoffs. But that's a valid reason. The other valid reason is if you have Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. Those guys didn't really like to be in shotgun because they didn't like to turn their back to the defense. They were so good reading out the field after the snap. I'm not here saying that Jalen Hurts struggles to read defenses. People say that. If that's true, being under center shouldn't matter as much. Like the only advantages to staying in shotgun is running a lot with your quarterback or having just an elite processor that wants to see the whole field while he takes his drop. I don't think either of those describe Hurts. I'm not saying he can't read a defense. I'm saying he's not like a generational processor that can make the most of being able to see the field the whole time. And the Eagles aren't using him as a runner. Like, it doesn't matter if he likes it or not. It's just got to be part of the offense. And they've got to incorporate that next year. It's got to be there.
Yeah, so there's two things there that I want to touch on. So maybe we'll do them one by one. Let's do the Hurts discussion first. I think you replied to my tweet about this. So I tweeted something basically saying, basically just shut up about criticizing Jalen Hurts. Like, I don't care whether you think he's good, very good, elite, average. Just go and watch the film and tell me he's meant to do anything different this game. It was horrendous. He had no chance. He had absolutely no chance. I know Jay Gruden got in a bit of trouble hilariously for tweeting that, but you know what? He's right. Like the coaching staff absolutely left him out to dry. The plan was non-existent, and I know the safety he took was horrendous, and it was a bad safety. Don't get me wrong, but the guy is pushing because they're losing. They're not scoring anything. It's another third down. It's another play where he's getting pressure. It's another ridiculously bad design when no one's open. I refuse to believe that Jalen Hurts is the one that makes this offense simple. Like, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. There are so many coaches that take rookie quarterbacks. Look what Shane Steichen did with Anthony Richardson when he played this year. You're telling me Richardson's going to go through his reads and process things better than Hurts? I just don't buy it. I do not buy it. Look at what coaching staffs around the league are doing to some of the young quarterbacks around here. He has been left out to dry big time. Like, I strongly, strongly believe that. I have a lot of concerns about this team long term. Coaching staff, general manager to an extent in terms of positions they prioritize, aging veterans on both sides of the ball. I would put Jalen Hurts, my level of concern for Jalen Hurts, about as low as it could get. Like, I really do not want it. And I've always said this, and Jalen Hurts does not necessarily play the position historically the way that I have learned the position myself, and that's why I've always been more critical. And if you read prior film reviews, I've said this. I've said I would have traded him. I would have gone after Deshaun Watson without the off the field and Russell Wilson. I've said this. Like, I'm not hiding from it. I've never been fully on board with Hurts. The last 2 years, I've seen more than enough. We don't really talk about it very much, but his accuracy is excellent. Like, his ball placement's really good. You don't see him sow many throws. You look at someone like Trevor Lawrence and when Wentz was there, and you see quarterbacks miss. You don't see Hurts miss that often. When you see him miss, it's probably because there's a defender right there because there's no separation anyway. His ball location is pretty good. His deep throws are outstanding. His pocket movement is not the best, but he's also an elite athlete who should be able to break out of the pocket. Like, if you ask me where my concern levels are in Jalen Hurts, they are very, very low compared to some of the other problems. I think this has been a coaching staff that has absolutely left him out to dry. And basically they can't do it again. If they get another chance, they cannot do it again. And if they don't get another chance, then they probably deserve, unfortunately, not to get another chance, because this year they've ruined a chance of a very, very young quarterback with a very good offensive line, with players in possibly the last ever year like Jason Kelsey. And to be blunt, they've ruined it. I can forgive the defense to an extent, like because of talent and because of other things. I can't the offense. I really can't. There's no excuse for them to be this bad. You cannot have an offensive line that is that good. You cannot have running backs, the weapons that they are, a tight end in Dallas Goedert, a receiver in Devontae Smith, even without AJ Brown, and be that poor on offense. And I don't think it comes down to Hurts. And I might be wrong. And next year, if they hire another offensive coordinator or they hire another head coach and Hurts struggles a little bit, then we can have, as you said, we can have a conversation. We can have a conversation this time next year. But right now, I don't even really want to entertain the conversation about do the Eagles have a problem with Hurts. I look around the league. I look at someone like Dak Prescott, who I like, but he's obviously physically maxed out. And I think Hurts absolutely has the upside to win a Super Bowl. Well, I mean, quite frankly, he's performed well enough to win a Super Bowl, doing something that we've never seen, those middle tier, like a Trevor Lawrence. He's always compared to people like Lawrence and Dak. So I always mention those people because they've not done what Hurts has done. Hurts carried the offense on his back in the Super Bowl and played well enough for a whole postseason. Like the Eagles should have won the Super Bowl last year. I have never seen someone like Dak, someone like Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence. Dak, I don't think he's a Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen level. I think most people would accept that. He's probably not a top 3, but not everyone's got a top 3, top 4. Like I think he's clearly in that 5, 6, 7 range. And in my opinion, he's at the top of it because he's one of the only people to have proved he can do it in a playoff game. Even someone like Herbert, who I absolutely love from a traits perspective, has not done the things that Jalen Hurts has done in the postseason and in games like the Super Bowl. So I think this year, you see, he's not confident. He is not playing confident. He was not confident yesterday, but I do not think it's on him. And maybe I'm being too nice. Maybe hindsight will prove me wrong. Next year, I am pretty much like on a scale of 100%. How much is the coach's fault? I'm going like 95. Like I'm that high. I'm that certain that I'm going coaches over players right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's possible that 2022 is as good as it gets for Hurts. If that's as good as it gets, with a competent defense, it was good enough. It would have been good enough to win a Super Bowl. He may never play at that level again. I don't think that's reasonable to think that he won't. But you see it. You see guys have a one-off year. You see Joe Flacco have that run he had in the playoffs and get paid huge with the Ravens and then just never live up to it. Like that happens. And maybe that's what happened here. And maybe Hurts will not be that same sort of player. But when you look at it, I mean, Occam's razor, you look at this system that he plays in, and it's just, you could draw it with crayons on a brown paper bag. Like that's the level of scheming and coaching that we have here. And so for me, I said on the BGN instant reaction show, I am very open to having a Hurts conversation, but I'm going to need to do it after next year when he has a competent coaching staff around him. If it looks the same, like you get competency in that offensive meeting room and it looks the same next year, then we talk about, was Hurts just carried by AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and a great run game and a great offensive line? We're never going to do that again. You just can't compare last year to this year because he's working with absolutely nothing from a coaching and schematic standpoint. It can't be overstated how bad it is. And that's why, and I'm not a fire people guy. I fully endorse that Nick Sirianni should be fired. And that sounds crazy a year away from a Super Bowl run. I just look at what he's doing, and I to steal the line from Sheil Kapadia, he breaks coaches down into doing more with less, doing what's expected, or doing less with more. I mean, there's no denying that Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson did less with more this season. Now, how you parse that, I don't know. Is this Nick Sirianni? Maybe Nick Sirianni meddled with the whole Sean Desai firing and Matt Patricia came in and it turned out awful. And so as the offense was tanking down the stretch, he just said, no, I'm going to learn from my mistakes and be hands off. And this is all Brian Johnson. Maybe. Maybe this is Nick Sirianni meddling in everything and constructing the offense. And maybe Brian Johnson's a fine offensive coordinator, but he's being hamstrung by Nick Sirianni. I don't know. What I know is it doesn't work right now. And the Eagles front office has to figure out what the issue is, because it's possible it's just one of those guys. I think it's likely more Nick related than Brian related, but I'm fine with getting rid of both of them if that's what it takes. If you're not sure, just get them both out and start over.
Yeah, that's why it's so tricky with Hurts, because you basically you need to see him in a different offense. The defensive staff's all to get fired. So if Sirianni is back, then I guess Johnson will be as well. Because I don't see how you fire every single offensive, basically coaching staff, or your whole offensive coaching staff and your whole defensive coaching staff, and your head coach keeps his job. So I'm sort of with you, weirdly. I don't really want to say fire Nick Sirianni, because I mean, look, his record, he just wins. I wanted to talk a little bit about the run game as well, Shane, because I have
quick before we get there.
Sorry, yeah, go for it.
Here's the problem: if you retain Sirianni and you fire Brian Johnson and bring in another offensive coordinator, if they fix this offense, they will be gone in 2 years. And that's just the nature of it. That's why I'm pretty out on head coaches that don't call plays on one side of the ball, specifically on offense. Every team in the league is searching for offense. And if you do not call plays for your offense as a head coach, as soon as you get someone that does, that's good, they're going to be gone. Which brings me to, someone asked me about what if they get rid of Brian Johnson and bring in Frank Reich? And my initial response was very negative to that. But I've been thinking about it. I want to float this by you. I generally think Frank Reich probably didn't do a very good job in Indianapolis or Carolina. But one thing that would be in favor of that is, one, I think it's somebody Nick Sirianni would trust and stay out of their way. And then two, I think his offense is a little outdated, but I will say, I don't think Frank Reich will get another shot as an NFL head coach. And so there could be some merit to bringing in a guy that's called plays before. I mean, he failed as a head coach twice, let's be honest. But if he came in and did a good job, I don't think he would get poached away. So that's trying to thread the needle probably too finely of guys Nick would trust who aren't good enough to get hired as head coaches somewhere. But I don't know. Maybe that could work. I would have to sell myself on it, but it's not my preference. But it was something I was thinking about today.
Yeah, well, I thought about it before we recorded, actually. I don't know why it came up in my mind as well. It feels like too obvious, doesn't it? I think you're right. I think Reich's a little bit outdated, and I think I would rather someone who's maybe a little bit more, let's say, with the times, or has had more success recently. But I'll tell you one thing. There's absolutely no way that performance happens with Frank Reich on the coaching staff that we saw this week. Just no way. Like, he's way, way, way too professional. His offense, rightly or wrongly, will have answers to things. The argument for Frank Reich, to me, it streaks of a little bit of arrogance again, which is where the players are good enough. So we don't need an advantage scheme-wise. We just need a decent coach, which would be my criticism. But I wouldn't hate it. If Sirianni's going to stay, then I need to see somebody that can actually proven to do the job, and also someone who ideally wouldn't get fired. Not fired, hired away from somebody else. And I feel like Reich's failed enough times as a head coach now, where I can't imagine he gets another head coaching gig that quickly. Before we move on to the defense very briefly, Shane, and to be honest, as I said, I haven't gone on with defense this week because it just sucks. I mean, basically every way possible. I want to talk about the run game, not just because it's my thing to talk about the run game. I have absolutely no idea what happened to the run game this week. I've basically been on here looking like a mug now for about a month saying, the run game's back. The run game's back. I'm waiting for the report that says Jalen Hurts got injured last week or something, because what on earth happened to the quarterback run game? I said this for a while. I think this Eagles offense runs off the run game. I still believe that. I think, yes, the passing offense has been very strong with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, but this is a team that has to run the ball. So the past few weeks, we saw some look that the quarterback run game was coming back. So if you go back to the Cardinals game, Jalen Hurts had 8 carries, and there was some QB power in there. There was some QB counter bash. There was some cool stuff that we saw. Obviously, the Giants game just is a write-off because it didn't matter. Hurts was pulled very, very early on. But the Giants game before that, DeAndre Swift had 20 carries. Jalen Hurts had 8 carries and a touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell had 6 carries, 41 yards. Like, where did the quarterback run game go? Like, it wasn't there. I think they had one quarterback run. Sean, I'm going to read out the stats from the Eagles-Seahawks game, the 19th of December. Jalen Hurts, 13 carries, 82 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, the run game was back. The quarterback run game was back. Now, if Hurts is injured, that's the only thing that makes sense. But the run game this week was awful. Like, there was nothing there. They ran outside zone, inside zone, which we've been saying they run the start of the year. That's all we were talking about. They ran from pistol every time, from 12 personnel. Every time they ran from 12 personnel, the Bucs played 6 on the defensive line and played single high safety. The Eagles just ran into a brick wall time and time and time again. And then I keep seeing people go online saying, well, that's why you can't run the ball, because they couldn't run it. They couldn't run it because the Bucs knew they were running it, because they were running it in predictable situations. That's why they couldn't run it. They didn't commit to it. They didn't try anything. I didn't see tackle trap. I didn't see QB draw. I didn't see QB. I mean, the counter run just wasn't there. Like, I was watching it like, what's going on? This is the game plan they came up with. I just wanted to mention it, basically to try and cover myself and make myself look a bit smarter, because I sound like an idiot, because I've been writing and saying on this podcast every week, the Eagles run game's back. The Eagles run game's back. I was like convinced the Eagles run game would at least be good. It was awful. Like, it was genuinely awful. And it wasn't Swift's fault. It wasn't really the offensive line's fault. They just kept running the same run plays in obvious running situations when the Bucs knew it was coming. It was so predictable. We've said for ages, this running game is not the same without Jalen Hurts running the football. Like, it's just end of. And if the coaching staff decided to give him 1 carry in the biggest game of the season, then that is terrifying. I know Hurts looks a little slower this year, and I know he looks a little banged up, but I had to look this up because it's almost incredible that I sort of forget this. He's 25 years old. Sometimes I think of Hurts as like a vet, as like, oh, you've got to protect his legs, and maybe you shouldn't run that much. Like, he's 25 years old. He's got 4 or 5 years of running left. Lamar Jackson's 27. God knows how many carries Lamar Jackson's had the past 5 years. Like, Hurts is a very good athlete. Like, Hurts should have another 3 years of running as a big part of the run game. And you'd think they're going to hide it for the playoffs. I get that. So they might not run as much in the regular season. I totally get that. And then when it's crunch time, we're going to unleash it. And the Ravens have done that a little bit as well. I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to bring him up to check, but I'm pretty sure if I look at Lamar Jackson's rushing numbers, as someone who owned him in fantasy this year, I'm pretty sure he wasn't running the ball a great deal at the start of the year. But then definitely as the season went on, he started to run it more. So I just have absolutely no idea where the QB run game was this week. Like, it was bizarre. It just totally vanished from the opposing, from the offensive game plan, sorry. And I haven't read anything about Hurts being hurt. I've not read one article about his knee being bad again. I didn't read anyone talking about it before the game. So I'm really, really hoping he was injured. I know that sounds strange, because if he wasn't, then that makes the game plan even worse. Like, even worse.
Yeah. It was bizarre, to say the least, to see 0 design QB runs. I mean, not even design QB runs. I don't even remember seeing like a read option play where he just handed it off. Like, you had the touchdown to Goddard where it was like the little pull option sort of thing they run, where it's basically handed off or roll out a couple steps and throw it to Goddard for a touchdown. But there was never any effort to like get Hurts involved in the running game. And you would think in what's essentially the biggest game of the year that you would see that. And so I'm with you. I wondered if we're going to hear something about an injury, because it just doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, you're down A.J. Brown. That makes it harder. Now you're playing a team that blitzes a lot. How do you beat that? It's being able to run the chains, and the Buccaneers were putting so many guys in the box, but still, like, Hurts should give you that +1 advantage in the box, and we just didn't see it. So I don't know. It makes sense to me early season to stay away from using Hurts as a runner a lot, but in those big games, and certainly in the playoffs, you have to be willing to roll that out. And so I almost think he has to be injured. And if not, like you said, that's just an even bigger indictment of this offensive plan.
it just doesn't make sense. Like I keep refreshing my feed, thinking we're going to hear about it. We're going to hear he was injured. Like the Bills do the same every year. They don't rush Josh Allen as much, and the playoffs come around. Like the QB run game is still like the cheat code of the NFL. Like it's the biggest. Look around the NFL. Unless you're coached by basically Kyle Shanahan or you're Patrick Mahomes, and even he is a very, very good scrambler. Like the QB run game is a big part of it. I was listening to the Athletic Football podcast I was listening to with Tice and Robert Mays, and they are basically as big of Dak Prescott fans as anyone. Like they rate him more highly than anyone I've ever heard. And even they were doubting basically, is he physically good enough to win a Super Bowl? And I was really surprised because I thought basically they were all in on Dak. Like they were, and basically they said he's a 4th round pick and he's not the top athlete and he's not top arm strength. And you look at all the quarterbacks around the league that are in the playoffs. You look at Lamar Jackson, dual fasted quarterback, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, except for Brock Purdy again. Like that's the game. Like it's not like a joke play anymore. The quarterback running game, we're not going back 10 years where like people would scramble. It's a big part of teams' offenses now. It's a huge part. It was basically the Bills' offense for about 3 years with Josh Allen when they didn't have a running game. To not even call it. And the weird thing is he had a scramble where he looked quite good. He looked quite spry, which makes me think that he could have carried out some runs. Like I just don't. I have no idea. QB draw makes sense if I'm being honest, because every time the Eagles went empty, the Bucs went 6 on the line of scrimmage. I get that, but like there was nothing. There wasn't. I did not see a single QB counter bash play, which they have basically run for the past 6 weeks, and they've run it really well. I don't know what to say about it. I literally have nothing. If someone finds out, I'll make sure to please tweet me if he was actually carrying an injury. But even if he was, unless you're in real danger of like wrecking his knee long term, I sort of feel like, well, what's the harm? Because you're going to lose anyway. They were losing anyway. So in the first half, why not try and run him a bit? And if it doesn't work, then what are you really going to lose? So I didn't get it. I just wanted to talk about the run game because I feel like I've been so positive about it the last month, and this just knocked back every single bit of confidence I had. And if I'm being honest, and this is going to annoy everyone, so I'm not even going to, once again, I'm not going to tweet this out. I don't know how much of a role Jeff Stoutland has in the Eagles run game, but I'm pretty sure he's not just a normal offensive lineman, normal offensive line coach. He's involved, isn't he, in the run game? I mean, he's the run game coordinator for this team. And if the Eagles are going to clean house, Shane, and start afresh in everyone, it's like just cut everyone, every coach. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to be as gutted as I would have been 6 weeks ago if Jeff Stoutland is released as well, because I don't really understand the run game either. Like I didn't get the run game in this game. Like I didn't get it. And I think they were too focused on inside zone, outside zone at the start of the year. Then it got better and we saw more counter come back in. We saw more gap scheme. We saw more tackle trap. But this week just knocked all my confidence. And maybe I'm overreacting to one game, and maybe Hurts was injured, and Stoutland would say, "Listen, Johnny, he was hurt. We couldn't call any of it. So that's nothing outside of my control." And in which case, I don't want Stoutland to go. By the way, I mean everyone recognizes him as a fantastic coach. I'm just being honest. Like I was not at all happy with the run game this week, because they're one of the great ways of stopping pressure. And when your team's crap against the blitz, just running the football, not throwing it 40 times a game. Having success with the run, and they had nothing. They had nothing. They couldn't run the ball. Every time they ran, as I said, it was pistol, 12 personnel. The Bucs went 6 man line of scrimmage. And I'm not kidding. I'm not going to tweet every clip, but basically every single time the Eagles went pistol, 12 personnel, they ran it. It was laughable. It was genuinely laughable.
Yeah, well, that's all season. They only run out of pistol. That's pretty much it. And I could look up those splits. I've looked them up before, but it's overwhelming that the Eagles are going to run the ball when they go into pistol. And that's part of the problem with, I mean, their offense is it's so like last year we didn't talk, but last year people talked about the Eagles would go in 4 down fronts to rush the passer, 5 down fronts to stop the run, and having that so siloed. That's the way that the run game, or that's the way that the Eagles offense is right now. You can tell based on their alignment really strongly. If they're in pistol, it's going to be a run play, and you just can't be that predictable.
Shane, just quickly to finish this off, because I always scroll through and try and see if I look at accounts. Nate Tice has just tweeted this literally just now. When the Eagles went 12 personnel, the Bucs played only 3 defensive backs. So the Bucs went heavy, basically.
Yeah, they were like 6'2".
Yeah, 6'2", basically. They played that. So listen to this. They played that 12 times against the Eagles, right? The whole season, the Bucs have played it 11 times outside of the red zone. So this was a game-specific plan for the Eagles. And how did the Eagles adjust? On those 12 plays, the Eagles had only 3 successful plays. Now, ironically, one of them was the 55-yarder to Devontae Smith, which just proves a point. Go 12 personnel and then throw it. Like, that's what I've always said. Like, you don't just have to run when you go 12 personnel. Go pistol play action. The fact that 55-yarder was against the Bucs with only 3 DBs on the field is a great example of, like, the Bucs just didn't care. All right, you got one. Well done. You got one. We're going to stop you every single other time because we know what you're going to do. That's laughable. Like, that's for the Eagles not to adjust to that and not to realize that every time they were going 12 personnel, the Bucs were matching it with 3 DBs. They should have kept doing it. Kept going 12 personnel and then just start throwing at it. What'd you do? You forced the Bucs to put 4 DBs on, play nickel, and then, or get 4 DBs or play nickel, and then you start running it again. Like, it's a cycle. It's what good coaching staffs do. Just everything was bad. Like, I know we've gone on about the offense for a long time, but I knew this was going to be an offensive episode because I feel like the defense, we'll talk about it briefly, but everyone knows. Everyone's getting fired. It's not going to look like this next year. Whereas the offense, I feel like there is a chance still that this matters. Like, quarterback's going to be there, players are going to be there, coaches might be there. I can't explain how disappointed I was just with everything. Literally everything to do with the offense. It was an out-and-out disaster of performance from the coaching staff.
Yeah, when the Eagles are in pistol, they run the ball on 71% of their plays this season. When the Eagles were under, they ran the ball on 92% of their plays. Now, that's heavily swayed by the tush push, I'm sure, on the under center. And then in shotgun, they throw it 65% of the time. So, yeah, just clear as day tells of what you're going to do.
And what annoys me is because people then say, oh, the under center run game, that's why they don't do it. Or I keep seeing the Eagles were right, stop running the ball because they can't run it anyway. And it's like, no, they can't run the ball because they're not built to run the ball well like this week. Like, there wasn't the idea that they just shouldn't have I've seen people already say, like, every time they ran the ball was a waste of a play. Should have thrown every play. And it's just like, no, because you can't do something, fix it. Don't just stop doing it. Oh, we've had 2 bad runs from under center. We'll never run again. They're terrible from under center because every time they go under center and run the ball, the defense knows they're going to run it. And every time they go 12 personnel pistol in this game, they were terrible at running the ball because the defense knew they were going to run it. It doesn't mean you stop running the ball. It means you do something different in how you run the ball. This offensive line, this team should have carried this running game. If Hurts was injured, even bigger reason, no AJ Brown, it should have been the focus. They try things. They didn't even try. They just ran the same stuff. And again, dare I say, Shane, I'm going to come back to that word, arrogance. Arrogance from Stoutland as well. Arrogance from the running game. That we will do our thing and it will work. We don't care if you know we're going to run because we've got such a good offensive line. We don't need disguise. We don't need to try and hide what we're going to do to you. We've got better players than you and it's going to work. And it doesn't work and you're not better. So suck it up. Look at it this offseason, whoever's there, new coaching staff, old coaching staff, whoever is there, please look at this game tape. Look at it, study it, and realize that you're not as good as you think you are and that other teams have passed you by schematically and you need to start catching up because otherwise, I'm not looking forward, as you could probably tell from my tone this episode, to watching this for 17 weeks next week and writing about it because it's a job and I have to. Assuming I'm still doing this next year, and it was boring this week. Like, it was, if I had to watch this every week, it'd be mind-numbingly boring because there was so little excitement. I saw someone on Twitter say they turned off the game, and they've never turned off a game before, and I was like, I don't blame them. I do not blame them. The game was basically over once the Bucs got their first touchdown. I don't know what it was like live, so I don't know what Twitter was like live. I don't know whether they were just absolutely melting down, which I'm guessing they were, but I had zero confidence. Absolutely zero confidence. The second that first 3rd and 2 happened and they threw it deep Dallas Goddard, I could have turned off the TV then. And that's bad. There's a playoff team with good players, with money spent on a quarterback, and you cannot be that bad again, ever. And I can excuse mistakes. I can't excuse just coaches just flat out not preparing a team to play in the playoff game.
Yeah, I spent the fourth quarter, to give you an idea of what Twitter was like. I spent the fourth quarter answering questions about head coach and offensive coordinator candidates. So that's the headspace that I didn't. It was on. I was barely watching the fourth quarter. I was answering questions about coach candidates and posting mock drafts.
Yeah,
so
that's
where I
sounds
was
about
at.
right. Shall we touch on the defense very quickly, because I feel like there's only so much we could say. Do you want to throw it to a late break?
Yeah, that might be good. We'll throw it to a break here to pay some bills and keep Rachel happy, and we'll be back right after this. We are back here on the Shane page. We're going to briefly talk about the defense because we're not really capable of having a short show. Even when we say in our chat before we start, we will have a short show. We're going to try to talk briefly about the defense because, I mean, there's really not a lot to talk about with the defense. You guys all saw nobody can tackle. And that makes it kind of hard to play football, believe it or not. I tweeted this out earlier in the week, and I cannot remember the exact number now, but I think it was like a 27% missed tackle rate in this game, 21.3% missed tackle rate. Zach Cunningham missed 3. Josh Sweat, Kevin Byard, and James Bradbury each missed 2 tackles. Jalen Carter, Avonte Maddox, Hassan Reddick, and Bradley Roby each missed 1 tackle. So tremendously awful tackling. The same things that we've seen over and over. The Buccaneers, the Buccaneers just really surprised everybody by rolling out 12 personnel and then emptying out their backfield to make Hassan Reddick drop into coverage. I don't know how this crack staff could have ever anticipated a team doing, exactly what the last 2 teams you played did. But the Eagles were more than happy to continue putting out 5-man fronts, continue dropping edge rushers into coverage. We even had one. It was a great rep by Kevin Byard where he's blitzing and he's unblocked, and he gets there in almost under 4 seconds, an unblocked pressure in almost 4 seconds. So just some tremendous scheming by this defensive staff coming into this game. But again, we were more disappointed with the offense because this is pretty much what we expected from the defense.
Yeah, the defense did like everything we said. We haven't actually even spoke off air about what we'll do over the next few weeks, but we will still be podcasting. And I think maybe we'll do more of a detailed, like player-by-player breakdown on offense and defense. We won't get into too much today. But like schematically, it's just the same. Like the move to Patricia has been the worst thing. It's worse than I ever could have imagined. And I wasn't actually that mad about it, Shane, as you know, because that last Sean Desire game was so bad. I didn't mind, to be honest, because I was so done with it. But the 5-man pressures are killing me. Like, they're actually killing me. They just keep blitzing a linebacker from like 5-10 yards deep, and he never, ever gets home. I don't have a number, Shane, but have Zach Cunningham and Nicholas Moreau got a sack this year from blitzing? Like, I don't know if they have, maybe 1 or 2.
Zach Cunningham has 0 sacks in his last 38 games.
Yeah, brilliant.
Nicholas Morrow had that 3-sack game earlier this year.
Oh, yeah.
And those 3 sacks bring his total of his 6-year career to 7 sacks.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny enough, I wanted to mention this play as a specific, because I think there was loads of like hilarious. I imagine you've clipped it up. I haven't. So the touchdown when everyone fell over. And
I might need you to be more specific.
Yeah, more specific. Yeah, the touchdown where Avonte Maddox ran in to was it Eli Ricks, and then everyone fell over.
The other one where that happened. Yeah, hold on. I put up the wrong one.
I think it was the first one. I think it was the first one when then Eli Ricks managed to like push him back into the end zone. When there was actually nobody there because it was a man coverage beater that they run. I've seen everyone moan about like this play because Avonte Maddox plays it terribly, and the safety and the cornerback like don't communicate. But actually, this is how, like I said online, I got PTSD from the Eagles 5-man pressures. The first thing and genuinely when I saw this live, I didn't look at the missed tackles. I didn't look at Maddox and Ricks running into each other. The first thing that came into my mind was this is because they rushed 5 again. And I knew they rushed 5 again because they have Avonte Maddox as a safety coming down in coverage of Rachaad White. This is the easiest completion to Rachaad White ever. If Baker Mayfield wants to check it down, like just look at how far away Avonte Maddox is. And by the way, Rachaad White is a good receiving back, and they throw to the running back a lot. This is not a team that doesn't throw to their running back. Like, this is a team that uses it as a weapon. Just stop rushing 5. Like, just ask a linebacker to cover Rachaad White. And it's amazing, isn't it? On that play, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Genuinely, I'm not lying. The first thing that came to my mind was I know they've rushed 5 because there's no other reason, and that's why, by the way, this pick happens. It's all very well telling Eli Ricks to like look where he's going, but normally mesh concepts have a cornerback the other side of the field, and you are taught to avoid them. One play high, one play low. Or how on earth is Eli Ricks meant to see a guy coming from his diagonal? Like, he's in his blind spot. He's got absolutely no chance. And the reason why you never see teams do this is because no team asks their safety, who is like 15, 20 yards off the ball, to cover a running back. Just look pre-snap. Like, what on earth is Eli Ricks meant to do here? I know people can say he's meant to get out of the way of Maddox, and they should try. And also, to defend Maddox, he's also panicking because he's playing a new position, first of all. And then he's realised he's in a horrendous position to cover Rachaad White anyway. So he's trying to get downhill as quick as he possibly can. Like, to be honest, I've got one of my points. There's no point even talking about tackling. There's nothing schematically fun about tackling. It's just terrible fundamentals. But this play, and it's all because they rushed 5. And it happened multiple times in the game. There was a completion to Cade Otton on the first drive for about 13 yards on second down because they rushed 5, and there was no one in the middle of the field.
And Avonte Maddox plays with outside leverage with no help inside.
That's the one. Yep, I've got it clipped up to tweet out. That's the one. Their 5-man pass rush is as bad as anything I've seen. I don't know why they do it. It's beyond me. There were so many mistakes in this game we could get to. James Bradbury is gone physically. I've almost been annoyed at Bradbury some parts of the year. This was like I've gone past annoyance to like I feel a bit sorry for him because I feel like his career is just like gone in 1 year. Like I don't see what's going to happen there unless he magically rediscovers some athleticism because he can't play. Kevin Byard, unfortunately, we all hoped. It looks like he doesn't move very well. But the back end was horrendous. Like I thought Slay actually played well. I always think Slay plays well, to be honest with you. I think Slay's just a good player, full stop. But the defense it plays up to their level. Like I feel more critical of the offense because for the defense, I'm a little bit like, what more do you want them to do in terms of the linebackers stink and the secondary stinks? So I get that. The defensive line actually did turn up for once, I thought anyway. I thought we've moaned about defensive line a lot. I still think next year that's going to be a strength. I still maintain my long-term concerns about Jordan Davis being anything more than a bit part player, basically. But I think Nolan Smith really flashed. I think you want to talk about him later. I think Milton Williams really flashed. I think Brandon Graham showed out again. So I think the defensive line, I think even Fletcher Cox didn't have the worst game in the world. I think the defensive line is something to hang your hat off. But it was just bad, wasn't it? It just wasn't very good. Like the whole way the defense is constructed, the way Reddick was dropping into coverage like 2 of the first 3 snaps. I think you tweeted that out as well. And by the way, the first snap of the game was again when I lost my whatever at home because I watched the Bucs motion to 2 receivers out to Reddick's side and drag him out. I can see it, and I'm not a coach, and I would attack the Eagles defense in the exact same way they did, and they must have been laughing. They must have been like, "Oh my goodness, they've done it again." All we've done is motion a receiver to the 2 wide receiver side.
Eagles fans gave the 49ers a lot of crap last year for trying to block Hassan Reddick with a backup tight end. Now you know how to do it. You put the backup tight end on the field and motion him to Reddick's side, and Reddick will drop into coverage. You don't have to look at it. He doesn't even have to run a route. He can literally just stand there. But like, if you could block Hassan Reddick, 100% guarantee you can block Hassan Reddick with a backup tight end. Why would you ever not run 12 personnel and do it? Like, that's 100% chance, 100% success rate blocking Hassan Reddick. If you just put a second tight end on the field on that side and have him run any route to the flat, and Reddick has to cover it. Like, it's brilliant. Kyle Shanahan was ahead of his time. He just didn't have it figured out quite right. He thought you had to actually put the guy on the line of scrimmage to block Reddick. But what he really should have done was put them standing by the sideline, and then Reddick blocks himself.
And I've always defended this because I don't particularly like, I mean, this is all philosophical at this point, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm not a big 3-4 guy. I've always been more of a 4-down front guy. And I think that when a team is basically, this is my personal opinion, is when you've got a team who has 2 outside linebackers who can both rush the quarterback and both drop into coverage, then the 3-4 is outstanding. Because basically you line 3 defensive linemen. I mean, and we play more of 5 defensive linemen. I don't even want to call it a 3-4, but let's just say for argument's sake, you know what I'm trying to say here, that dropping outside linebackers in coverage is fine if you've got guys that can do both. The Eagles are trying to run a system that Patricia wants to run with, and I think they got Nolan Smith possibly wrong if that's what they thought he was. I think I've said to you before, he might just be an edge player and he mightn't be rubbish in coverage. Hassan Reddick failed his career as an off-ball linebacker. He's not. He's an edge rusher. He's a 4-3 edge. Done. Josh Sweat, 4-3 edge. Done. Every snap there in coverage, unfortunately, is a waste. The only time you would ever do it is once or twice a game to hope that you catch the defense out. They don't do it once or twice a game. They do it consistently. And they don't do it in an unpredictable manner either. They do it in an obvious manner. It's not difficult to see that they are going to do it. And that is what is so frustrating. They barely did it. Hassan Reddick, I think, dropped back 6 times in total. So at the end of the day, it wasn't as much as it looked at some points. I think that was still 20% of roughly his snaps against the rush, against pass, sorry. But it just wasn't there. Like it messes with everything the way they play their 5 defensive linemen. And whatever scheme they look at next year, whoever they hire, it might be time to simplify things and get back to what we know the Eagles can do, which is historically been a 4-3 front. And then consider or a 4-2, whatever in the modern game, etc. But I just don't think I basically don't think the 5-man front works unless you are fully comfortable with both your edge defenders dropping into coverage, because otherwise it's not unpredictable. Pre-snap, they haven't got the athleticism to drop back into coverage with their hands in the dirt. It doesn't work. And it's continued to not work for a long time now. And watching Reddick the first few snaps, he looked angry as well. I think some of the defense just didn't quit, but basically just gave up because they knew they were done. I thought Graham, Smith, Cox and Williams were probably the 4 that didn't. And I think you could criticize. I mean, I quite like Slay still, but I think you can criticize basically every single other defender. It was just they're put in a really bad position by the coaching staff, and the talent's not there. The talent is not there on defense, unlike the offense.
Yeah. I will say on this play that you talked about with Maddox, I will give him credit for one thing, and that's after he tackles Eli Ricks. He really gets on his horse to get back down the field, puts in great effort to get down there and also tackle Keely Ringo. So we can talk about tackling issues for the Eagles defense. Avonte Maddox, say what you will about his coverage. He was very good tackling Eagles defenders during passing plays. So he's got that going for him.
Yeah, he also just did not look right, did he? Ever since he came back.
No.
They rushed him back. He plays like 70 snaps this week or something. Like they really tried to get him back, and he's clearly not right. Bradbury's obviously done. Roby's not good. Yeah, we'll talk more. I think we haven't even spoken off there, but we'll do something individual at some point. We'll look at some of the free agents as we go through and maybe do a little bit of a debrief on individuals. Defensively, I don't really have anything else to say. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about rookies, but schematically, this game was much more interesting from an offensive point of view because the defense, I knew what it was going to be. I don't really think there was anything that was going to happen. Patricia's not exactly going to relinquish play calling or coordinated position this week. That was what it was going to be. Offense had more chances to do things right. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to mention then, Shane, on the defensive side of things before we finish up this incredibly depressing episode?
Yeah, I would just say I thought Nolan Smith played well. Obviously he got the sack. He had a couple really good reps in run defense. I've tweeted them out. I won't put them on the screen here, but there's one where he does a really good job, like attacking the sniffer on an inside zone and collapses that play in. So it has nowhere to cut back. There was another play where they try to block him with a tight end on a run. And you see offensive linemen do this to defensive linemen sometimes. Jalen Carter's been susceptible to it where they just pull you to the ground because you've got your weight so far forward. he pops the tight end and then just like pulls him to the ground. It was really impressive. He had a really good tackle against the run, like the inside. So I just thought that he did a really good job in his limited snaps. And I don't think it's a coincidence that when he played in this game, he played like 4 or 5 snaps in a row instead of coming on the field for one play and dropping into coverage and coming off. There's a rhythm to rushing the passer, like getting in the feel of the game. It's like, I don't know. I'm going to mix sports analogies again, but you don't bring the guy in off the bench in basketball to shoot 1-3 and then put him back on the bench and just keep doing that. Like, you've got to let him get in the flow of the game and heat up. And I just think Nolan Smith was misused this year. I think he should have played a lot more. Watching him celebrate that sack with Brandon Graham, like, got me in the feels a little bit. I hope that Nolan Smith gets to play a lot more next year, because I do think he's an exciting player. And just generally on rookies, while we're there, the Eagles have got to play rookies. Last season, I remember it being a storyline heading into the Super Bowl that the Eagles had played their rookies the lowest snap count in the NFL, and the Chiefs were like number 2 or 3. Last year's rookies played 877 snaps. The average was 2,000. I don't know a good place to look up like rookie snap counts this year for all the teams without tallying it up myself. But I know the Eagles rookies played 1,775 snaps this year. Now that's with 2 first-round picks and 4 picks inside the top 70. And that would rank 27th among last year's numbers. Like, the Eagles simply do not put rookies on the field. We talked about 20% less than he has in his career when he's not producing. And you've got a first-round pick, 188 snaps this year at edge rusher. And we talked about James Bradbury. He played 1,090 snaps. He allowed more touchdowns than he had pass breakups. If you look at all cornerbacks who played 500 snaps this season, per PFF, he had 8th worst passer rating, most touchdowns allowed, and 13th lowest coverage. It was blatantly obvious that he was bad all season, and it took Darius Slay having surgery to get Keely Ringo on the field, and he played 199 snaps. Like, it was apparent to everybody Bradbury was done, and you couldn't get Ringo on the field. And maybe I'm biased because I had a first-round pick or grade on Keely Ringo, but you just got to be willing to let young players play. And the last one I'll talk about, the Eagles have got to stop drafting interior offensive linemen on day 2. Interior offensive line is the most plug-and-play position in the NFL. Over the last 2 years, 14 interior offensive linemen have been selected in the 2nd or the 3rd round of the draft, 2 by the Eagles. So out of those other 12, one of them tore their ACL in the preseason, so they have no snaps. So the 11 healthy guys that were not drafted by the Eagles averaged 775 snaps as rookies. The Eagles' 2 day 2 selections, which is Cam Jurgens in 2022, played 35 snaps as a rookie. Tyler Steen this year played 71 snaps as rookies. They have got to stop wasting draft picks on interior offensive linemen a year before you need them. Offensive line is plug and play. You get the developmental guys on day 3. Like, if you're drafting a lineman in the 2nd round, he should be starting. And the Eagles, I agree, you should value the trenches. You should build through the trenches. But the Eagles' philosophy of how to build rosters and play rookies, it's got to change moving forward.
Yeah, I think the Howie Roseman General Manager podcast coming this year, I think it's going to be good. We've never done off-season podcasts, so I think there's a lot of stuff we can get in depth to. And Shane is a man with the numbers. Sometimes I think things, and when I message Shane, like, am I thinking this right? And he'll be like, no, you're not. Or hopefully he'll be like, yeah, you are. And I agree. And it's interesting as well. I think I'll finish with this just because it's random, but they talk about how we're having impact on game day rosters, which I know has been a big talking point this year. And that makes sense if you want to argue, like, well, he paid James Bradbury, but he also drafted these guys. So it's a bit of a weird one. Like the Nolan Smith thing to me is weird because it felt like he was drafted without a clear plan of what he is. And they didn't really give him a chance to even figure out what he is. I know nobody really wants the moments in Nolan Smith as an off-ball linebacker. But if we're honest, do we think Nolan Smith playing off-ball linebacker would have been any worse than what we saw at off-ball linebacker this year? And he possibly could have got like a whole season starting worth of snaps. Like, I know people don't want to see him there, and I get it. And I know that I was pretty critical of him as an edge rusher, so it's one thing I've spoke about with him being an off-ball linebacker. But if we're being really honest, like, he could have got some snaps there, and that could have been a potential opportunity to get him more snaps. Even this week, when I thought he played well, 16 snaps. That's not enough. I think he had 5 or so pass rushing opportunities I remember seeing. Like, you don't give a guy a chance to really. I think he had more than 10 pass rushing snaps or once. Look at him up now. And that was against the Giants when basically the backups were playing. Now, I don't think Nolan Smith's had a great year, but you can't really evaluate him. You can't really look at him after 96 total pass rushing opportunities this year and say whether he can do it or not, because pass rushing is a skill. You have to develop it. You have to learn it. And the problem is he's going up against the same people in practice all the time. So you want him to face other offensive linemen and really learn his craft against a variety, because every offensive lineman is different, as we know. And he didn't really get the opportunity this year. And it means that the Eagles are starting next year, possibly looking to upgrade edge, because they didn't really give him an adequate chance to see him develop. So that was disappointing. I know it's not really specific to this game, but I think the whole idea of this team was they're meant to win now. They're built to win now. If you can lose, but you play rookies, fans will forgive you. What makes this team so frustrating is that this was a team ready to win. They should have been up there with the 49ers, the Lions, and the Cowboys this year. And they didn't just lose. They lost badly. And I think that's what makes it so annoying for me, is I don't see a lot of progress throughout the season. I don't like the process, and I don't like what I've seen at all, really, for a while now, which is tough. And I think really hard questions have to be asked of this team and the coaching staff moving forward.
Really all I have. Do you have anything else that you want to mention before we get out of here?
No, I've already said at the start, but I mean, like, I know you'll repeat the same thing as well. I know every single person says this, but yeah, thank you for checking us out. Some of the numbers have been really good. The comments have been really good. We've been, especially the last few weeks, which have been obviously hard as well to listen to. But yeah, we're looking forward to this. So we will definitely get working in the off season. We don't plan on going anywhere. We'll obviously have breaks, as everyone does. But I know we're massive draft guys. We're big on free agency. So yeah, it should be good. I'm actually looking forward to doing stuff video wise in off season. So I think there's like last year, for example, I wrote a whole breakdown of the run game. Like, we could do an episode on stuff that I really should be good. So I think it should be exciting. I'm sorry, Eagles fans, that this season turned out so rubbish, and it really was a bad end. But we're sports fans, so stuff could happen this week that would get us very excited again. And I'm sure we'll spend the off season getting excited about things just to be let down again, because that is sports. And that's why apparently we love it.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for following along with us this season. Yeah, your comments mean the world to both of us. So really appreciate you guys hanging in there, especially as the season kind of went off the rails for us this year. So like Johnny said, we'll be doing all kinds of stuff during the off season. If you have suggestions, things you want to see us do, be sure to reach out to one of us. We're always open to suggestions. We're not very far into planning the off season yet, but rest assured we will have content coming your way. So thank you guys for joining us for the On the Shane page. If make sure you smash the subscribe button, EGN Radio, so you get every episode. If you're an audio listener, give us your hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcast. The more places to follow us, the better. And we will go. We'll be back in here next week to break something down. And so we will catch you guys